Imagine this. You're standing in your backyard. The sun is high, maybe a little too hot. You've got a shovel in your hand, and a big idea in your head. What if I could dig a hole all the way through the earth, straight through? Where would I come out? It's a question that has puzzled kids and curious adults alike for generations. On paper, it sounds simple. But the journey to answering it takes us through molten metal, ancient maps, Cold War science experiments, and even a forgotten town in Argentina. This is the story of the ultimate underground journey. I first heard the question in 3rd grade. We were playing in my friend Jeremy's sandbox. He turned to me with a plastic spade and said, "I'm digging to China." We all laughed. We didn't know anything about geography, but somehow this was a common phrase. Dig to China. It sounded right. Turns out, this idea has been floating around in pop culture for decades. But here's the truth. If you're in the United States and you start digging straight down, you're probably not going to end up in China. You're going to end up somewhere in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Why? Because of something called antipodes. Antipodes are 2 points on opposite sides of the Earth. Think of sticking a skewer through a globe from one side to the other. That's your antipodal point. So if you were to dig a perfectly straight tunnel from your location through the center of the Earth, you'd emerge at your antipode. And there's a handy tool for this. A website called Antipodes Map lets you click any point on Earth and see its direct opposite. If you start in Madrid, Spain, you'll come out near New Zealand. From Honolulu, you'll land somewhere near Botswana. From most of the US, as I said, you're headed into the Indian Ocean, far off any coast. Interestingly, only about 15% of land on Earth has an antipode that's also land. The rest ocean. But let's talk science. Because it's one thing to imagine digging through the Earth, it's another to actually think about what that means. The Earth is about 12,742 kilometers or 7,918 miles in diameter. You'd have to dig that distance straight through. But it's not just a matter of depth, it's what lies between. Let's break it down. Crust 5 to 70 kilometers deep. That's the layer we live on. Rocky, solid. Mantle 2,900 kilometers thick. Hot, semi-solid rock that moves slowly. Outer core, made of liquid iron and nickel, it's over 4,000 degrees Celsius. Inner core, a solid metal ball. The temperature here about 5,400 degrees Celsius, same as the surface of the sun. No drill, no machine, no sci-fi tunnel borer could survive the pressure and heat, let alone create a tunnel through it all. Even our most ambitious projects barely scratch the surface. The Kola superdeep borehole in Russia holds the record 12.3 kilometers deep. After 24 years of drilling, the team had to stop, not because they ran out of ambition, but because the heat and pressure became unbearable. They weren't even 0.2% of the way through the Earth. In the 1960s, during the Cold War, the US launched Operation Mohole. The goal: drill through the Earth's crust into the mantle, not even all the way through the Earth, just past the first layer. They set up off the coast of Mexico. Hopes were high. But after several years, technical failures, rising costs, and congressional budget cuts killed the project. In the end, Operation Mohole proved one thing: the Earth doesn't give up its secrets easily. Let me tell you about a man named Gary S. Waring, a geology professor in the 1970s who loved teaching kids about the Earth. One day, a student asked, "What if you really could dig through the planet?" Inspired, Gary decided to calculate the trajectory and destination of a straight tunnel from anywhere on Earth. He published a small pamphlet with maps of antipodal points. It was simple, elegant, and quietly brilliant. Waring's work went unnoticed by mainstream science, but in schools, teachers began using it to challenge their students. It changed the question from a silly fantasy into a real geographical puzzle. Today, that same idea lives on in interactive apps and geography lessons. Here's where the story takes a strange twist. In 2012, a class of students in Castro Urdiales, Spain, made a surprising discovery. Using the Antipodes map, they found that their small town was directly opposite a place called Webberville, New Zealand. They reached out. Emails turned into video calls. The two schools began collaborating. Students created projects, exchanged videos, and even wrote joint letters to their mayors. Eventually, they named each other antipode sister cities. The story was picked up by local papers. A documentary was made. The mayors signed a symbolic underground handshake. All because someone asked what's on the other side of the earth. Let's get a bit more imaginative. What if you could build a tunnel through the earth, and you didn't melt? What if the tunnel was perfectly straight and vacuum sealed to eliminate air resistance? Well, physics has an answer. It's called the gravity train. In a vacuum tunnel through the earth, gravity would pull you down at first, like a falling object. You'd accelerate until you reached the center, then decelerate as gravity pulled you backward in the opposite direction. The trip about 42 minutes. No engines needed, just gravity doing all the work. It's elegant. It's impossible, of course, but elegant. In the end, the question if you dig a hole through the earth, where do you come out isn't really about geography or physics. It's about imagination. It's the kind of question kids ask when they still believe anything is possible. The kind that leads to discoveries, strange stories, and maybe even friendships across the globe. We may never dig that tunnel, not in our lifetimes, not ever. But the act of wondering, of turning over the globe and imagining another world on the other side that might be even more valuable. So the next time someone hands you a shovel and says let's dig to China, smile. Because whether you land in an ocean or a small town in New Zealand, the journey starts with a question. And questions have a way of taking us deeper than we ever imagined. If you found this helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more amazing content.